Welcome back to another episode of our Eagle Perspective podcast. I'm Mike Siciliano. I'm joined today by two of our most esteemed Santa Fe Christian Eagles, our head of schools and president, Rod Gilbert.
Hi, Mike.
Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Has anyone told you look great today yet?
You did earlier.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure you got that.
It was good brownie points.
Yeah, great. Okay, excellent. Hannah.
Good
Hannah
morning.
Park, Chief Academic Officer, in your third year now in that role.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. And you always look great for the record.
Well, thank you.
So-
But you didn't actually comment on it. So this is...
I wasn't sure what the rules were on that, you know? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I've learned.
You're
Noted for next
forgiven.
time,
You're forgiven.
You
Yeah,
know?
that's okay.
I'm just more surprised when he looks good, you know? So
I am
That
too.
was a good saying.
I'm just kidding. Well, thanks for being here. I mean, you two
Well, thank
are
you.
really, when we think about Santa Fe, who we are and our philosophy, both academically and also just kind of the grander mission and purpose of why we're here. I mean, you're really the guardians of those things. So today's a chance to share a little bit with our community. You know, a lot of people maybe have heard some of this, but especially someone who's new and doesn't know Santa Fe. It's a way to get to know the deeper pieces of it, I think would be fair to say.
that's good.
So we're really lucky to have you here.
We're glad to be here.
Okay. Well, let's start with, Rod, I'll start with you.
Sure.
You are now, is this your 7th year here?
I'm in my 6th year.
This is your 6th year.
But since I led through COVID, like dog years,
Yes,
I've been here
it's like-
87.
Right, exactly.
Survived
Exactly.
it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're now like a wily veteran of Santa
That's
Fe
right.
Christian.
Thank you for saying
Yeah.
that. Means a lot coming from an alum.
Yeah, well, it's
Thank
true.
you. Thank you, Mike.
It's true, and you are my boss. I just want to be clear that to everybody that you're my boss. So when people accuse me of kissing up, I want them to know they are accurate.
I would say that you do it well and frequently.
Yeah, good. All right, good.
You're not even good at hiding it.
Thank
Some
you for
people
that
hide it.
feedback.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's what I'm going for.
Radical candor.
Yeah,
That's what
so
you and our
that's right. That's true. So why don't you talk about a little bit about
Sure.
you've come here, and maybe I'll skip to the end a little bit of where we're going to get. We're going to talk
Sure.
about some of the things we've written down.
Sure.
And some of it's been written down a long time. You know, the mission statement has been written down a long
Many,
time.
many years. Yeah.
And then there's some new things that we're just writing down, like student
Yeah.
learning objectives,
Yes.
Hannah, that you've just with a group of people come up with. And there's all kinds of stuff in the middle that we've written down since you got here.
That's right.
So maybe
right.
share a little bit about what you found when you got here and what you've learned, and then this process of getting some of this written down.
Sure. I would say since 2018, I've been discovering that which is, not creating something new. And so you're an alum. What year did you graduate?
2001, also known as the greatest class in Santa Fe.
I'm aware of that. And then Hannah, how many years have you been here?
I'm starting my 17th year.
Okay, so you'll have literally 40 years of Santa Fe life inside you. I'm in just year 6. And so I feel like as the president and head, I'm a steward of the school that has grafted me into the DNA. And so I'm not creating something new. But when I got here, I told the board I could feel a lot of weightiness about what this place is. I just couldn't see it written down thoroughly in documents. And I think that bonded Hannah and I my first couple of months of we need to write this down.
Yeah. And, I'll say the two of you in particular have spent much of the last 3 to 5 years probably doing that. And
Extensively,
I
yeah.
think about, our convictions, for example,
right.
and the prayer
right.
journal.
Yeah.
And maybe just remind some people who maybe have forgotten about this, about what went into, these are our convictions and our values, really.
That's right.
That are things that we all know and feel.
Right.
But some of them we couldn't actually find written anywhere.
Yeah, that's again. I told the board. I said I can smell the aroma like a wonderful recipe of a stew or a hot apple pie or something. But it's like grandma's secret recipe. It wasn't written down. And we had consultants come in for about a year and a half, and then Hannah and I, the principals, went off to Big Bear and started trying to shape it into words. And ultimately, it turned into the prayer journal
We
that
have
Hannah
focus
gets a lot of
groups
credit.
of
Yeah,
parents and
alum,
students,
Yeah.
teachers.
So for people who are new, who maybe haven't seen that, I have a copy of one right here.
Yeah,
Beautiful prayer journal.
that's it. It's in year 3.
Yeah. So what is it? If someone has never opened that, what will they find?
I want Hannah to take a shot at it.
Okay.
You look at me, but I want to hear her.
Our prayer journal is created around our Santa Fe values of worship, mentorship, stewardship, and scholarship. The way we framed this, we didn't know how to communicate. There's so many layers of stories under each of those big
Yeah.
sections, and we didn't know how to communicate that to the families, to the students even, right? And so our initial document, I think it had, 75 pages?
It was overwhelming.
pretty,
Yeah, it was too long. Too long.
And we tested that out with a group of parents, and they just said it was just too much for a busy parent to understand the DNA of the school. To get through all this was just too much. And so the thought, I think you had were interviewing somebody?
Well, I actually had
A
breakfast
pastor.
with Mark Foreman, who's now the retired pastor of North Coast Calvary. He and our friends. I showed him all of it. We had like a 2.5 hour lunch. He zipped through it. He said, "I see what you're getting at. It's way too much, Rod. But you're doing something unique here." And I said, "Well, please fix it." And he said, "I'm your friend. I'm not a magician." And as I left the breakfast, I got on the highway, and Angie and I read a little daily prayer journal by John Bailey, and it just hit me on the 5. Oh, we could turn all those paragraphs into little prayers. And I ran into the hallway and told all the ladies, let's turn it into a prayer journal. And so Hannah and Dawn and the principals and even board members helped write those prayers that summer. And it turned into what we have today.
So if you read it, it's pretty much, every day you're getting a little piece of Santa Fe.
Exactly.
And a biblical tie. And, by the end of the month, you'll kind of have a real sense for who we are historically. And to your point, it's not this is who we're going to be. This is who we've been over 45 years.
And I would say when we're at our best.
Yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah.
Because we do dumb things. We make mistakes. And I had one dad told me, read to it 3 or 4 times, and he said, I thought it was like a curricular thing you were trying to drive at. He said, it's really almost more of a corporate culture. He runs a company. And he said, you're actually defining the culture that you feel when you're on the campus. I thought that was a nice compliment because it fits.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like moving from a society of oral tradition.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is what I think we've been for a long time.
We're in our 46th year. We've been around since '77, and we had promised. What year was ACSI here? When we promised them we would do this, we just didn't know exactly the vehicles. When did they come back around?
2026.
Yeah.
The COVID year. 2020
was if you remember, they were approving our accreditation as their phones were.
I don't want to
beeping.
remember it.
Okay,
Yes.
let's.
Yeah,
not
I think
go
we
there.
sent them home a day early because all the schools were closing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Hannah, let's talk about. So the prayer journal is. If we're in our 3rd year of the prayer journal. And then there are some other things that have come out since. And one of the newest ones is our student learning objectives. Can you talk a little bit about that process and what are student learning objectives?
Right. So the prayer journal gives you the guidelines or more of a framework of who we are, right? And that's teachers, parents, the entire community. But we had to drive it down into the classroom of what the students are expected to know. And so our curriculum leadership team, we got together and we actually dissected the prayer journal. And we went through circling and underlining words that we felt like our students really need to grasp these things, these concepts. These are transferable skills that they will need once they leave Santa Fe. And so ultimately, these are not, so a lot of schools have student learning objectives. Student learning outcomes.
Right.
A lot of schools have student learning outcomes. And initially, this is what we were trying to create. But it's not simply a list of academic skills that we're trying to instill in our students. It's really to help them understand who they are in God's story. And so how do you create that as an outcome that they will arrive by the end of their 13-year journey at Santa Fe? So we decided that we would turn them into objectives. And this is what we're striving for. We're also not striving for an objective at the end of this journey, but at every level of their journey. And so this is true of a kindergartner, your 8th grader who's asking lots of questions, and then of course your senior who's ready to launch. Yeah. So
and might I add also your 25-year-old.
Yeah, that's right.
But like who has hopefully developed a commitment to some of these objectives that they will keep at it, as they go on with their life.
Right. And so we got together and came up with 6 objectives. Do you want me to read them?
I would love for you to read them.
Am I reading them?
I mean, I know them all by heart already, of course.
Yes.
But I think that the readers would like to hear you read them.
Okay, so these are attributes of what we want our students to have, right? So we want them to be discerning thinkers, but not simply because we want them to just be a problem solver, but so that they can discern what is true and what is relative truth, right? We want them to be resilient risk takers. And in this, we're talking about having age-appropriate successes as well as setbacks, that we don't want them to simply take risks and always win, because then that's not a risk. And so
parents say they want it, but sometimes they fight it because it's hard for parents to embrace failures sometimes. We're frightened by them. I was as a dad.
I mean, listen, and I'm, as you know, my kids are still young, 9 and 6, but I love philosophically the idea of them struggling. I hate when it actually happens. It feels very
different. You're a loving dad.
You're
a loving dad.
We call it
hard.
productive struggle.
Yes.
That they
I've never heard you say that phrase before.
Yeah, they are struggling through it. And so how does this come to life? So you're in your math class and you have a problem. Instead of simply following a formula to solve that problem, they will struggle through to solve the bigger number sense issue there, right?
Yep.
And so
I think there's other ways we integrate that into the culture as well, and we'll continue as we get these out and think through that. But I'm struck by, yesterday, and I know I'm breaking all the rules. I'm not supposed to date, these episodes because I never know when they're going to put them out. Oh. So like I'm saying
so
yesterday,
it
could be in 8 months that people are watching this. But we had our homecoming chapel, and one of the things that struck me, there's a certain, image I think people have of who the homecoming court kid is, the princes and the princesses, or our students in general, of they have it together. Right. They have a long track record of amazingness. They've never done anything wrong.
Sure.
And they shared their testimonies, and I saw a bunch of kids that had some adversity, family.
And they talked about it.
Yes, and they shared it with their peers.
By the speeches.
Like family tragedy and death in the family. Families that have been through some serious and significant splits that the kids have had to navigate, injuries, their own personal medical challenges, all of life's ups and downs.
Doubt and faith.
Yes,
one of the kids said
doubt.
His sophomore year he thought maybe God's not real.
Yeah, and
so his journey through, I thought, wow, that was profound.
Yeah, so that is also struggle. That we're sort of, and the kids just did this, but culturally, it's awesome that our other students picked as representatives people who had demonstrated some of that resiliency and recovery through that.
It gives them a complex understanding of their world.
Yeah,
and I would think that they're more interesting.
That's right. They are more interesting to listen to.
Yeah. So, but that's a good example of how these objectives too can kind of weave their way in, not just in the classroom, but in the culture.
All activities.
And another attribute that we want the students to embody is to become a gracious communicator. Now, that we went back and forth with that one, right? Because it's really speaking truth in grace. Right. And so how does that even play out for our students? It's, again, I don't know when this will air, but politics and faith is one way that we really framed this. We were able to write our politics and faith apologia paper off of this one topic, where we want our students to be able to engage. Civil discourse is an important skill to have, so we want them to engage, but how do you engage and speak truth without offending somebody, right? And how do you listen? And so that's one of the student learning objectives that we want the students to take away from their 13-year journeys here, at Santa Fe.
Yeah, and I might add that one right now feels particularly countercultural. We're not seeing a lot of in the world of what we're expecting of our students when they get there.
We want to be bold and say the truth, but we winsome about it and come from a place of brokenness because if you're sitting before the throne of Jesus Christ, you are a broken person.
Yeah.
So when you go and talk with human beings about politics, it's from a place of humility.
Yeah.
And if you've not started there at the foot of the cross, then you really just come off as a jerk in the public discourse. And so we wanted to be humble, take risks. They might offend somebody, but let's do it in a winsome way. Let's be honest, but not a jerk.
Other learning objectives you want to share with us?
Intentional leaders. And now, this goes back to our mission of the school. Do you know the mission of the school?
Sure
Should
do.
we test you?
Yeah, he is. Yes. Don't make him try to
Partnering. I get the first part.
Yeah.
Partnering with Christian parents within a Bible-based community
to disciple
in order to disciple students to embrace biblical truth, inspire academic excellence. There's academic excellence.
Strive for academic. Oh my gosh.
Strive for academic excellence, and then there's something
to model Christ-like
leadership and to influence their homes, churches, and communities.
That's
for
right.
Christ.
That's right.
That's pretty
and
good.
so the leadership aspect is a huge piece to Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Right?
Can we acknowledge our mission statement is wordy?
It's really long.
It is.
It is very long.
But it's beautiful.
It's intentional.
Yeah.
And it starts off by saying we partner with Christian parents. That's a big, we gloss over that real fast.
Central part
but
of
it
the
is
school.
central to who we are.
Well, we're covenant-based school.
We are a covenant-based school, correct.
I don't see many school mission statements that actually have the word homes either.
That's true.
It's normally
to
like
influence your homes,
go
churches.
affect
Go
the world,
change the
and
world.
go change the world,
Yeah.
go slay the dragons, go be leaders, whatever. But to actually, we're partnering with parents so that when the kids leave here, they've got the tools to have a
It's the
Christian
inside
home.
out model.
Yeah,
we
it's
talk about,
it's
right? Take care of your
I
home
think
first.
it is wordy, but I wouldn't change it. And
Yeah. So in it, we talk about preparing Christian leaders of tomorrow, and we have a very interesting understanding of what leader is. I think the world will just simply say that it's somebody who's who's got the most power, maybe,
Right.
But an intentional leader is somebody who is actually serving with care, a genuine care for the other person. And so that's where we landed with leadership. And I know that you guys are doing a lot in high school right now with all the special trips that you take where students are able to learn these skills.
Yeah. I think that just to add on to that too on leadership, the way I've come to think of it, because we do get the world gets a little obsessive with defining people as leaders or followers.
How so?
Well, it's like either that person's a leader or they're not.
Yeah.
Are they a leader or a follower?
Right.
I think the reality is for all of us in different spheres of our lives, we're sometimes leading and sometimes following.
Absolutely.
Right.
So
Real leaders are always following.
Yeah. So it's not, someone once said to me, well, not everybody's a leader.
Yeah.
And so how can you have a school that is focused on leadership when some people are called to not leader, And I think I think everybody's called to lead in some sphere, and it's not so either or.
It's baked into our mission statement where we say it's to influence.
Yeah.
Everybody influences somebody else.
Yeah.
So you can be a quiet influencer or somebody who can do it winsomely.
Yeah, I've approached it from a Marines. I was raised by a Marine. Every Marine believes when he goes out into the field that the guy above him may die. And so every Marine thinks I might be put in charge at any given second. And I asked my dad that, and he said, we were all trained that he said, we're hierarchalists, but we have to own our situation, and we might be called upon to lead the guy behind us. And I think I'm glad you brought that up, because I've heard people say, well, we're not all leaders, but I have the opposite view. I think everybody's leading somebody every day, all day.
Yeah.
They're either leading them to Christ, or they're leading them and following Christ even more. And that's every single person on the face of the earth. We're doing one or the other.
Yeah. Any other learning objectives you want to touch on?
Purposeful contributor or a purposeful creator.
Okay.
Now, this is also, all of these are baked into our prayer journal, but we don't want our students to simply have knowledge and then that's it. We want them to have knowledge and then do something with it that benefits others. And so you can create a lot of things and not benefit a lot of people, or only benefit yourself.
Vanity.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so we want them to come out of Santa Fe, or even while they're at Santa Fe, to create something to contribute to that which is good, true, beautiful, and winsome.
I have a question for
I'm
you.
going to break it
I have a
in. I'm going
question
to
for
say it 3
Hannah.
times today.
So a lot of times when people see these things, and you made the point earlier, but when people hear these things, they think of the graduate. So you were elementary principal for how many years?
15.
How would you describe this for the kid going from second to third? We've not really talked.
Yeah.
So how would you think about it? If you were sitting with the second grade teachers, like how would you describe it as you're handing them to third grade? I know it's
Well, I mean, something like being a resilient risk taker, that starts in kindergarten. The first time you do something and it's not right, or maybe you've never heard anybody criticize anything until you come to school.
Oh.
Because you're at home and everything you do goes on the refrigerator door. But then you come to school and maybe somebody sitting next to you may say something, not that we want to encourage, that type of behavior, but at the same time, you yourself recognize, ooh, so-and-so is a little bit better than me. Or she can do monkey bars and I can't. That realization of comparing yourself with others come very early. And so you try and you fall and you try again and you fall again. And I seriously, the monkey bars is the best way to learn how to be resilient.
Yeah.
I've never heard you say that before, but I think you're right.
How about the rings?
The
Because
rings are
I know
hard.
from my kindergartner last year, it was like, first of all, they're not allowed to use the rings until after
they're-
Christmas, right? And so then
Why
there's
was
this-
that?
I think there's
They have-
probably a history
Is
of
it
kids
age
not doing well on
development?
the
Well,
rings.
just body
they have to learn
development?
how to fall.
Oh. Now
Yeah.
that in itself is a
It's
great
awesome.
sentence.
Yeah.
Learn how to fall.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to fall because if you don't know how to fall properly, then you will hurt yourself.
And then there's this big anticipation of, coming back from
Can you
Christmas
do-
break, I get to try the rings. Wow. But some
great.
kids really struggle with
Yes,
it, right?
absolutely.
So they
Right.
have to learn what to do with that as their other buddies are flying across
Right.
them.
Or when
That's
you're
great.
learning to read, or when you're learning to do your math for the first time. And so at every level, our students have an opportunity to speak graciously to one another, to contribute purposefully within their community. You don't have to be a senior preparing for some big event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
also
well said.
I also love the word create that is in there because I think maybe this is too self-reflective, but I don't think I had that leaving Santa Fe. I don't think I had the. I think I was very much in the I want to be successful. Teach me how to do it so that I can repeat it very well and do it well. That's a real shift that
plug
from
and-
2001
plug
to
and
now
play.
has changed quite a bit. But I love that it's named of, sometimes you got to figure stuff out or that entrepreneurial,
Right.
make something, build something.
Right.
I'm not going to give you all the answers. You have to have enough resiliency and drive to create it yourself.
create.
Our math department actually spent some time with the word mimic. We do a lot of math problems, a lot of problem solving, yet are the skills getting better? And we were really trying to figure out where the issues were. And it turns out that sometimes in the teacher's desire to teach students how to problem solve, they're solving the problems, but the kids aren't solving the problems themselves. They're simply mimicking the teacher solving the problem.
Yeah.
So we thought, there's an issue right there, right? So now we're getting really down to the granular level of how this impacts the teacher, their daily lesson plan.
Yeah.
But it sits on top of all these very heady documents.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's layers and layers of philosophy that we then the next layer gets placed on top of. And so that's the work that I'm doing with the departments is to take this and then drive it down to that almost lesson level to how do we make this come alive.
Yeah.
Do you think the kids fight against it?
I was going to
They
say
do
at
feel
least
it.
year to year,
Yeah.
they notice
They
the
do feel
shift
it.
of more independent.
Mimic to solve.
Yeah. And I know because sometimes kids will come in and they'll,
It's so hard.
It's hard. Or they'll say, well, the teacher isn't teaching.
You have that body language down.
It's
you
pretty
can tell
good.
you heard
It's
teenagers all day.
years
The eye
of
rolling
this.
was
And it's
perfect.
Years of this.
It's a little bit of a conversation around, well, what is the teacher's job? Yes, to get you to learn. And is it possible that they've set this up in a way that is a little more pushing you a little more, stretching you a little more?
Yeah.
That's going to be good for you. It's not always just standing up there,
Right.
you do, I do, and and then you do,
They
right?
have to do the heavy lifting.
Which is
Yeah.
what we all learned math as
Yeah,
children.
exactly.
We,
Right.
we were only mimicking
Yeah.
through
So
most of our math problems.
I will shout out to Joyce Stevenson and
Oh.
Amanda Bergner, who, I know you gave them something to read this summer, and I'll right along this lines, and they came back very excited about, kind of having a different flow in their classroom.
And these are veteran teachers.
Yes. And you go in there
still
now,
learning.
and it's kids in groups, huddled around the board, figuring stuff out, essentially creating the math.
Right.
And of course, the teachers are there to come alongside
Facilitate.
and help.
course.
And
Yes.
but it's pretty neat to see.
Yeah.
I'm glad you've touched on this. After the Prayer Journal went public, we went 6 months later. We went back. I don't remember if you remember this. Went back and looked at the first 6 prayers and value statements have the root word create more than 12 times. It's either create or creation, and we didn't do that intentionally, I don't think. But if you go back and do the word count, there's something going on there that. If we're all the bearers of the image of God, part of our responsibility is we're creating stuff every day, either good or bad.
Yeah.
And those are the worship
That's
prayers.
That's right. They're inside
They're
the worship.
inside
The
the
worship
worship
becomes
prayer
active.
sections.
Like as you worship, then you go and do something.
Yeah.
You go
Yeah.
and be
I love
active
that.
in your worship,
Yeah.
which is
It's the overflow of your heart
that's right.
and your
And part of that is being a part of the created order.
Yeah. Well, one more kind of level to this that I want to touch on that you touched on a little bit earlier, Hannah, but we have our mission statement, we have our convictions, our stated values, our statement of faith,
Right.
for example. We have our values in the prayer journal, which is kind of how we've operated and what's important to us over 45 years. For student learning objectives, there's another layer now that you referred to called apologias.
yes.
So what are those?
These are special topics. So they're not necessarily subject matter, though they could be, like our literature apologia. But these are axioms of how we would approach those topics. So, for example, our literature apologia talks about how we select literature and what books would make the cut and what wouldn't. And it's not simply just a list of these are great books with great stories, so therefore they make the cut. But really, our purpose in there is to ensure that what students read, we read to study and not necessarily to be entertained by it. Sure, there's an entertainment aspect of it, but what we read in the classroom to study must meet these specific criteria. So the axioms are put in there. Our science and faith, how we approach science and faith. So we have an apologia for that, or the biblical hermeneutics, how do we interpret the Bible? We draw from 80-some churches here at Santa Fe, so people come from a different denomination, and I'm sure within their church they have stated documents about that. But at Santa Fe, this is how we teach students to read the Bible. So these are specific topics. We will probably produce several more in the years to come. But
And the first one was science and faith.
first one was Science and Faith with Brock Fellows.
Which I have to say was, as someone who lived through the 90s and,
Here at Santa
Fe, and the science and faith was a real tension point on some specific issues of, creation and is it okay if what am I allowed to believe?
Yeah. What can I say? What can I not say?
That
and
no one knew the boundaries.
like no one sort of knew, does the school actually have you must believe this about it?
Right.
Where's the,
Right.
I look at the broader Christian community, it feels like there's different views.
Right.
So I feel like these have done a good job of clarifying, and science and faith is a good example.
We
of that.
started with that one probably for two reasons. It's a hot topic.
Yeah.
And also, Hannah and I felt confident that the science department was at the maturing stage that they could handle it. And we had the right people there to do that. This science and faith actually came up when I interviewed here in 2017. I kept asking, I asked 4 or 5 times, what's the view? And the answer was, we don't know.
Yeah.
And so after I was here a few months, I revealed to the board that Santa Fe technically is agnostic when it comes to the understanding of science and faith.
Yeah.
They were aghast at that. And so we promised them, we'll get this in line. And now when we bring in new teachers, we had how many new families came in this year? 180?
Families.
A lot of families.
Over
We had
150,
7 or 9 new teachers this year. Now we've got these 12 new teachers. We have these axioms that Hannah and the teams have put together that are very intentional about what we believe, but it leaves a lot of principle-based flexibility as well. And that's the fun of being Christians. You and I don't think we've necessarily grown everything regarding origin of man. I don't know if we've ever even talked about it.
I don't know that we have either.
I don't think we have.
But I'm sure I agree with everything you say about it.
That was a test.
Yeah.
You passed.
Yeah.
We agree
But you also
perfectly.
know me well enough to know that I'm sure I disagree with at least some of it.
Well, and I would hope you would, right? And that's why you and I sit so close to
It's
each
awesome.
other. It's
It's the
radical
best
candor
part.
with the
Yeah.
two of us.
Yeah.
But for you and I to have the apologias where we have common ground.
Yeah.
Right. And so that if the kids know that you and the three of us and the board of directors and the teachers have that common ground in that multiple page
Gives them a
document.
guardrail.
Yeah, it gives them guardrails to talk about it and to see that even Christians can disagree agreeably.
Yeah.
And we don't have to fight about everything.
Right.
And but I've been very impressed with how Hannah's harnessed the teams. The hermeneutics one was a complicated one. I mean, and to get that really zeroed in took Augustus and John, the whole team took them a couple of years to really fine tune it.
Yeah.
And I would say that I think we've always, I mean, some of the teachers that we've mentioned, they've been here for many years, and they were the authors of some of these documents. So it's always been here. I think what's been difficult to navigate is having the permission to do it.
Yeah.
Like, who does it?
Yeah.
Like, who am I? And it truly comes out of this humble heart that our teachers have. Where who am I?
I don't
to
want to
write this
decide for
down?
the whole
Yeah,
community.
exactly.
You know?
They had to be given license.
Exactly.
And they probably needed me as the new guy to say, we can do this.
Yeah, and we can do
we have the
this.
right
Yeah.
people. I remember meeting with the Bible department 4 years ago, and they were like, yeah, we don't want to do that. and it was because of years and years and years, I think, of humble love for each other.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily want to fight through some of those topics.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Hannah came to me one day and said, I think I had a breakthrough with them because they're amazing people.
Incredible people.
But getting them to come up with a common ground, I think, really.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you asked the question about the apologies.
Yeah, well, I think it's been, especially for some of our legacy families, it's just really nice to see the school work through difficult issues and say, we love each other, we believe in biblical truth, and we're going to pick some of these issues and figure out how do we do this well, given our diversity within the faith community.
Yeah, lean
Absolutely.
into them.
And figure it out. And it's been fantastic. So I'll say thank you for doing it.
I think it'll have more impact over the next decade or more because as we mature as a school, we want to stay on mission to our core values. And now that we've got them written down, but there's still a lot of flexibility inside those. Like it doesn't address things like how to harness AI. Like you and I were talking about it yesterday.
Yeah.
Like what were our kids do in 10 years with AI or not do with it? Who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
No one really knows. But the values will be the same.
Yeah. Okay, so we've used a lot of words. So just to note for anyone watching or listening, the apologias are public. Actually, all of this is public. The mission statement, our convictions, statement of faith, our values in the prayer journal, the student learning objectives, and the apologias that have already been written. They are all public. They can all be found on our website.
Yes.
There's actually a document I know that you've sent to the community too that has a QR codes for each of them.
That's exactly right.
At the bottom of that document is an illustration about age appropriateness. And you mentioned earlier, Hannah, that we're not just talking about the senior. We're talking about what this looks like at each stage in the journey. And on the document, it's sort of separated K2, 3-5, 6-8, 9-12. And there are some words like fundamentals and exploration and skills. So maybe you could give a little bit of an overview of kind of what we're hoping for in each of those phases.
Sure. So the K2 or the primary grades, it really is an opportunity for them to explore, but also develop all of their basic fundamentals. I think you learn, what is that book? Everything I learned in kindergarten, or basically everything you need to know in life, you've learned in kindergarten. And so foundational skills, you'll have many, many years to do other things, but you've got those very basic years to learn how to read, right? So phonics skills or understanding of number sense and things like that. So foundational skills, will spend the most amount of time developing those skills. As they get a little bit older, their understanding of the world increases, their reasoning skills develop, and so we will have students become a little more skilled, so their foundation is there, but they can explore some more. By the time they get into the middle school years, they have an opportunity to try new things. I think so many of our students, or I think adults, if you look at the adults, so many people no longer do what they thought they loved doing when they were young.
No question.
Matt Corsaro, our drama teacher, he talks about how if you ask a group of kindergartners who wants to do music and art and paint, every single kid will raise their hand. And then you ask a group of 8th grader and nobody will raise their hand. And somewhere along the line, they were told or they decided that that's not for them.
Right.
And so we want the students to explore during those middle school years in a safe environment. And then by the time they get into the high school years, they have to be prepared. So we're going to spend more time really honing in on the preparation component and launch them off to college.
Yeah, and then really refine some of those higher
Basic
level skills.
yeah.
Although I do like to note there's a lot of exploration that happens in the high
Absolutely.
school too.
Plenty.
Of course.
But yes, it
Yes.
does by the end become much more refining and being prepared to be independent, and a lot less those basic fundamentals that you're
Right.
getting, in a lower school.
We played with the word becoming masters of something.
Yeah.
But we thought, we don't want to send 18-year-olds
Yeah.
thinking they're masters.
Yeah.
It's not quite.
Well, I mean, actually, they already do think they're masters.
they do
by
think
the
they're
time they
masters.
leave.
That's
Yeah.
part of us building
Yeah.
to them
Yeah.
a new level of
Yeah,
humility.
there's another level we could build on the document, which is their first year in college when they come back and they realize
Humbled.
they don't know everything.
That's
One of my favorite
And
phases.
then if it says, and it all starts all over.
That's
again.
right.
That's right.
How
We
much
start
I
again.
don't know.
Yeah.
I learned in my
Yeah.
first year.
Yeah.
We can do a repeat of that
Yeah,
music
just-
sign.
Yeah.
They
you
just
know,
start
that
back
goes
over.
back.
It's just
Yeah.
actually a circle.
Yeah.
They're going
Yeah.
back to developing
That's
fundamentals.
right.
That's right.
When they're,
Yeah.
when they're freshman year in college.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
I was thinking this morning, this year's senior class will be my 5th full
That you saw as
K-12
kindergartners. Yeah.
Wow.
group of students.
You remember some of them as kindergartners.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember their kindergarten interview.
No way.
And it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
They're the same and
watching
different.
they're totally. And watching that development is a special blessing
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And so I get to see this happen. And I've seen 5 iteration of it. So
Yeah.
it's good.
So we've just gone through all of this. It's, for someone who it's their first exposure to, it might be a lot of word soup.
Sure.
It might be a lot of a big, sort of map that takes a while to get used to. If you were to say if a parent were to say, what's really the big takeaway of all this, how would you answer them?
Parents are the primary educators of their children. Hannah and I are leading the school to be subservient to mothers and fathers. That's according to Deuteronomy 6. There are 3 types of authorities in the universe: church, government, and family. And we're not a government school. Hannah and I don't send this to Sacramento, for God's sake. This is just us, and we share it with the board, our board of directors who are parents. We're not a church school. We have 80 different churches represented. So we must be a family school. And so the intentionality of this is to say to mom and dad, here's what we're doing with your child, and join us in this partnership. And so we want them to really trust us when we say this is what we're doing, and not hide anything from them. Yeah. And because we are like subcontractors to mothers and fathers to prepare their kids to be great adults. And that's what moms and dads want. And we want to, by telling them this is exactly what we're doing, we're transparently partnering with them.
Yeah.
Goes back to our mission statement.
That's right.
Yeah.
Back to the founding.
Well, I know having little ones that still are on the early stages of this, and I get to kind of see behind the scenes look at it, and so I'm lucky that way. But it's just nice to know the amount of prayer and thoughtfulness that is put into everything. It's not haphazard.
No.
It's really intentional, and it gives me confidence that my kids are in good hands. So,
Me too.
yeah. Well, thank you both. For coming in and sharing. I know we explain these things in these podcasts pretty quickly relative to the amount of time that you all have spent pouring into them and agonizing over every word and having, really productive discussions and debates with our faculty on what's the right amount of this or that. But I think if anything, whether the document's perfect or every word is perfect, the heart behind it clearly comes through. So thanks for all the work that you've done on making us better.
Thank you.
Glad to be part of it.
All right. All right. Okay. And thanks to those of you watching and listening. If this is your first podcast episode of ours that you've watched or listened to, there are many others available. You can find our Eagle Perspective podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, elsewhere podcasts are available. You can always watch our video podcasts on YouTube as well. We look forward to seeing you again soon.